Now, one of Donald Trump's promises during his campaign to become US president was a deep cut in corporate taxes, and now he appears to be ready to formally put that proposal to Congress. But one of his other promises, to build a massive wall on the Mexican border, looks like it may be delayed. Now, the main part of Trump's plan is expected to be a reduction in the corporate tax rate from 35% down to 15%. So who are the main beneficiaries? Well, the Trump administration says it'll help thousands of small and medium-sized businesses and individuals. But the proposals may also benefit what are known as pass-through entities. These are companies like hedge funds and large real estate companies, including Trump's own businesses. Trump says the current tax rate makes the US less attractive for companies to invest there. And compared to other developed countries like France, Japan, the UK, Germany, its basic corporate tax rate is higher. But critics argue that many large US companies end up paying little or no tax even under existing rules. And then there are question marks over how the government will make up for the loss in income after implementing the tax cut. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says the plans do not include imposing a controversial tax on imports that would have raised billions of dollars to help offset the cost of the cuts. Meanwhile, another of Trump's top priorities may also face delays. His close advisor, Kellyanne Conway, says funding for Trump's planned Mexican border wall will be left out of a budget proposal that must pass by Friday. Leaving it in could have risked a massive shutdown of crucial government services next week. But Trump sounds confident that his wall will eventually go ahead.
The wall's going to get built, folks. Just in case anybody has any question, the wall's going to get built, and the wall is going to stop drugs, and it's going to stop a lot of people from coming in that shouldn't be here, and it's going to have a huge effect on human trafficking, which is a tremendous problem in this world.
Joining me now from Atlanta in the U.S. state of Georgia is Jeffrey Tucker. He's the Director of Content at the Foundation for Economic Education. Jeffrey, thank you ever so much for joining us once again on Money Talks. So let's start talking about this tax cut. I mean, who really is going to benefit from this? The U.S. economy is already doing pretty well. They're planning on using these tax cuts to boost growth. Will it really make an enormous difference, or could it actually end up hurting more?
Look, I have to tell you, I'm pleasantly surprised by this. I'm glad to see the wall go. This border adjustment tax was a terrible idea. This tax proposal is overall pretty good. I think it represents a lot of hope for restarting American economic growth. We've been in a slow growth period for almost 10 years. What are we going to do about it? Well, one way is to stop taxing business creation and capital and businesses that actually provide the jobs and the prosperity for a growing economy. So you ask who benefits? I think everybody's going to benefit, actually.
Well, let me put this to you. Income disparities in the U.S. are at their widest that they've ever been, almost since records started being kept. Isn't this tax cut going to exacerbate that?
No, I don't know. I mean, you know, I think a bigger problem than income disparity is just slow economic growth. We've suffered ever since the 2008 crisis, and something has to happen. We've got to start becoming business friendly again. You know, there's other parts to the tax proposal too that I'm reading about today, just like you are. One is an increase in the personal deduction. I mean, that is going to be enormously popular among, you know, middle-income families all across the country. I think it's good. It's good politics.
Okay.
And I think it's good economics.
Jeffrey Tucker, let me interrupt you there for a moment, because we are going to go live now to Washington, D.C. and listen to Donald Trump announcing these very tax cuts.
And good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for being here. This is quite an historic day for us, and one that we've been looking forward to for a long time, and one we're very excited about. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do something really big. President Trump has made tax reform a priority, and we have a Republican Congress that wants to get it done. And this is something that, quite honestly, I hope the Democrats would support too, because it's good for the American people. The president is going to seize this opportunity by leading the most significant tax reform legislation since 1986 and one of the biggest tax cuts in the American history. We've been working on this for a long time. We've had great meetings. We had a great meeting last night with the leadership of the House and the Senate. We have agreed on many of the important principles of tax reform. We look forward to working together with the House and the Senate very closely in the weeks ahead. The president has focused on three things since his campaign: job creation, economic growth, and helping the low and middle income families who have been left behind by this economy. He understands there are a lot of people in this country that feel like they work hard and they just cannot get ahead. They are sick of turning their paychecks over to Washington and having no idea of how those dollars are spent. They are frustrated by a tax code that is so complicated they can't even do their own taxes. That's why tax reform is such a big priority to this president. He cares about making the economy work better for all American people. Here's a little history. When President Kennedy cut taxes in the early 1960s, the top rate on personal income was over 90%, and there was rampant tax avoidance. And then, 20 years later, President Reagan took rates down to 28% for individuals. Since then, rates have been creeping back up, and more loopholes and special interest tax breaks have made their way back into the tax code, disadvantaging average Americans.
And we've just been listening to Gary Cohn, the US National Economic Director, saying that people are sick of turning over their paychecks to the government. Let's go back to Jeffrey Tucker in Atlanta, in Georgia. Very much kind of fitting in with what we were talking about earlier there, Jeffrey, about, putting more power in the hands of small and individual people and small businesses. Is this plan going to work?
Yeah, I think it's going to do this, and I'll tell you something else. It's going to be enormously popular. Americans feel themselves to be overtaxed, especially small businesses. The taxes are outrageous. You cited the data yourself. We have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world. I mean, that accounts for a lot of the slow growth. So this is very exciting. And as for the budget numbers themselves, a lot of these estimates about rising deficits and debts and that sort of thing do not take into account the additional economic growth that could be created by something like this. They're static models. And they hardly ever turn out to be true. So I wouldn't take those too seriously. And if I tell you what, you can see the appeal to the other side of the aisle, to the Democrats. I think it would be very smart politics for this to be a bipartisan effort. It's job friendly, it's growth friendly, and it could turn the American economy around again. As I say, I'm not a Trump partisan. There's a lot about his policies I don't like, but I think this is a smart and economically sound proposal, and I hope it goes through.
Fantastic. Jeffrey Tucker, the Foundation for Economic Education in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you so much for being on Money Talks. Before we go, let's go back to the White House, where the Trump administration has just unveiled its ambitious tax reform plan. It's the first such plan in 30 years that will no doubt change the way the world's biggest economy pays taxes. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin taking questions from the media now. Just to recap some of those changes: a 15% business tax rate and reducing the U.S. tax brackets from 7 to just 3.
Than anybody else. I think the American population